In this Magma Classroom lesson, we're on a journey with Ryan Allan to tackle essential principles to painting. In this video, Ryan will be demonstrating techniques to evaluate the painting process for complex surfaces and deconstructing these into simple practices to achieve successful results. Drop us a like and subscribe if you find this information helpful, and stay tuned.
Here we are. Hey everybody, welcome back to the classroom. Continuing our series of beginner digital painting 101 kind of classes. So far we've covered the basics of value and shape. We've dabbled a bit in color for about 2 sessions. Now we're going back a little bit to focus more on shape and value again, but with a form that is a little bit more complex than just spheres and apples. We've got here an annoying crumpled paper bag. Now, I don't know, I might have thrown myself in the deep end using this as the exercise today. Other people are going to look at it and be like, hells no, and I'll catch you in the next session, I'll paint apples. Or I might have bitten off a bit more than I can chew, and everyone's going to realize that I can't paint it all, because this can actually be quite a challenging subject. But hold up, let's revisit what we've done so far. Again, okay, our focus when we're looking at anything was starting with shapes, and really what's happened here is just that we've got a lot of small shapes. It's not a simple form anymore. If we were to, let's see, break this down, or think to what its original shape was. Let's find a nice pink here, something quite bright. If we think to what this object's original form was, it was pretty much just a box, right? With an open end. That's all it was. And then once someone was done getting their baguette out of there, went on to assault it, and now it has all these dents. So, but it's all just different little shapes that are in there. So it looks overwhelming at first. There is a lot of detail one can kind of get lost into, and it can be a little challenging to figure out where to start. But we're going to go back to the fundamentals, what we've gone through so far already in the classroom, and we're going to see how to tackle this. And there are a couple of different ways. So first, we got to follow our plan. If you do notice my canvas refreshing in the stream, it's normal on my end. It's just one of those things I'll have to deal with, and you might hear me moan about it from time to time. It's just a funny thing. Technology is very weird on my side. So when we're going to start off with anything, if we're going to do a still life study, that's what this is. First thing I'm going to do is just take a moment to analyze what's in front of us. Right. So we've already established that we're going to have this kind of basic form. That's what it was. Okay. If we squint our eyes at it, the silhouette of it is not overly complex, right? And we can simplify this. I know it's got all these little dents that come in here and various places where it jumps out. Our job in the beginning is to simplify things and then work from that, right? So I'm just going to do 2 lines there. Got a basic start to our form. Can probably just draw a straight line over there, and we've got a pretty much straight line there. And then everything else is kind of contained within. The other thing to think about, okay, shapes, we'll gradually break these down, but overall shape, that silhouette, pretty straightforward. The next thing is going to be our values, and this is difficult to figure out on something like this, where there's so many different changes, different plane changes, right? So this sort of like goes up, comes down, and then wraps around again. It's a little divot over there, and there's all these different planes that make it look pretty difficult, and it's not like they're all facing away or toward the light source to the same degree. There's all these slightly different angles. So we've got to think about that as well. Like how far off or away from the light source is this facing? Like how much darker is that? But if you start looking at relationships between things, it gets easier. We can sort of see, let's see, this is obviously a very, very obvious one here. The difference in value between these two is really straightforward. But if you just focus in on later on, when we start adding more details, you can kind of see those different planes and how they change in value. But again, we're trying to keep things simple here. So what's going to be helpful here first is to turn this into grayscale. Yeah. And if you do want to jump in on the canvas, which I have to give you permission to create layers and all that kind of stuff, if it's already there. It's already there. Cool. There are a couple of ways to shift this to grayscale, and if you do join in the canvas, you're welcome to tackle this either in grayscale or in color, whichever you're comfortable with. If you feel like color is still pretty intimidating, you just want to focus your attention on values and not worry about the color side, then this is what you're going to want to do. There's two approaches. One is to go to our view menu and shift to grayscale. Again, I've gone through this already in past classes, but I just want to refresh memories here. And now we can get a good look at our piece in just black and white, different values, or what is going to be a better approach, because what happens if I draw on top of this is that that's also gray, which I don't want. So I'm going to change my view back, and then let's do this on a separate, let's do this on a separate layer. Once my canvas is done refreshing. Okay, so I'm going to select my reference material, zoom out, I'm going to duplicate it, because I still want to keep the color one next to it, just so I can see. Let's shift over. I'm going to create a new layer. You can find it here. I'm going to grab my paint bucket tool on the left, select black, and then I'm going to fill my canvas with black. I'm going to change the layer mode here over here to color, which is here. Okay. Now obviously this is applied to all layers below it. That's why both images are now in grayscale. But instead I want this to apply only to the layer below where there's already some pigment, right? So only where that reference image is directly below. So I'm going to create a clipping group here. There we go. Now that completely gray layer is linked to my reference layer. Only that part is in grayscale now. Just a handy little summon. Cool. So now we can get a look at what's going on with light and dark. And the lighting could be a little bit stronger here. So I'm actually going to play with a new tool that you might have spotted. And that is to go to our filter. And another approach would be to just drop the saturation, like we have here, our hue, saturation, brightness, and just drop the saturation there. That's another way to apply it just to your single layer. Oops. Thanks, Rodek, for pointing that one out to me. But okay, so now I want to increase the contrast a little bit, because I want these shapes to be a bit more defined when I go into replicating them. So I'm just going to bump up the contrast of this layer a little bit. There we go. Just so those darks and lights stand out a bit more. Remember, contrast is just increasing the gap between values. There we go, full screen. Cool. So let's start breaking this down. Got a layer on top of this. Got a nice bright pink here. So I'm not going to worry with all these, like I said, all these little divots, these tiny little shapes to start. That's not what I want to do. I want to be zoomed out. I want to squint my eyes and get a sense of the silhouette, which we already spoke about earlier. That's pretty much a straight line. I'm tracing here, but it's really just to you're obviously not going to trace and then like draw directly over it. You're going to trace, get a sense of those shapes, and we're going to shift over to another part of the canvas and then kind of recreate those same shapes. It's just to help us get a sense of things here. So it comes in like that. Okay, I'm just going to straight line down. Now this was just a kind of straight box at one point, but now it's been crumpled inward. So that's why we got a little bit of an angled line there. It's turned slightly, it's not dead on. You can see that. And, you know, it does sort of touch the ground a bit over here, but overall this sort of lifts up off the ground into that side. Okay. Now, there's a lot going on here. A lot of change in the shape of the paper. But what we can do, just to start, is just draw a straight line over. We can connect that, and then from that, we can see whether or not we've got to take away, like cut in, like this, or if it comes out a little bit. Okay, my line's pretty thick, but it comes up a little bit. It does it. Pretty simple breakdown. Now we've got our silhouette. Then to break this down into just our light and shadow, it gets tricky. It gets tricky. But we know with a normal box. Yep. We can see our light source is coming from the side, right from the left side. You can see that clearly by the shadow that's here. And obviously where there's shadow on our shape here, which is all along the side. But now things have been crumpled. But there's still a distinct facet on that part of the image. So this whole thing here is kind of in shadow, but I'm going to group everything together. We've got shadow that's here, it's turning away from the light source, and then it goes into all this chaos, but I want to simplify. So I'll just drop that down and group things here. Now I know obviously go into light here. We've got a straight line there. And there we go. So now we've got like an overall shape of sort of light and shadow. We've got that as well. There's this little box under here. And that's as much as we kind of need to start. Maybe this we can kind of work with as another darker aspect. But let's dial back a little bit to just the silhouette when we start painting. Who's this? James. Welcome, James. Let me erase this part. Okay, so you've got a layer. Erase, erase, erase. That was a slow approach to erasing with such a tiny brush. I've got so much space on the canvas. Let me shift things around here. First I'm going to move this one, just shift it to the center, take this one, shift it over. Well, now we can kind of see with that. Can't really tell that it's a bag yet, but we've got a pretty straightforward shape to work with, right? So we're going to set up a let's see, we're going to set up just our silhouette first. Now the idea here is to go from big shapes down to small shapes. If you start thinking about all the tiny little details first, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're just going to rather go paint something else. So we're going to start big, go down to the small. So what's our biggest thing? Well, firstly the canvas itself, right? The background. Let's create a new layer for myself here. Hopefully I don't take over all the layers that everyone needs. And let's see, I will break this down as well into a little value scale so I can easily pick some values as I go along. So I can easily from that. Now the background is really quite dark. So I'm going to grab my darkest value here. And I'm going to make on a separate layer. Just get my background sorted out. Now I'm not drawing, or painting rather, super zoomed in. Like the amount of space it's taking up on my screen is really quite small. That's to also help not getting into the details. We've got quite a light table surface here. Everything's sitting on. It's a bit lighter than that. And you know, let's soften things up a little bit because it looks like it's a bit lighter. Yeah, I should be doing this so early on, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it lightly, just slightly. And that'll help bring out part of the bag in a second. Okay, so let's now get our silhouette down. I'm going to shift all this up, keeping everything, the brush hard and opaque. Let's try to get our shape in. It's helpful to work with a big brush first. So we had that sort of shape come in. Let's bring this up a little bit more. We had it come down. Okay. That's what happens when things refresh. I'm gonna do that. Come down. Bring it across. Goes up a bit. That's pretty much a straight shot up. Okay, there's the very basic, the very basic silhouette of our thing. But we might want to carve into it, remove a little bit. So I'm keeping this all in one layer. That can make things difficult, or it can keep things that much more simple, depending on your way of working. But I'm going to keep it all in one for now. Let's do that. Cool. That's as much as I want to do right now. And then I want to block in the shadow shape. So what did we have here originally? We had this whole section. That whole bit pretty much fits into shadow. So I'm going to try to do the same thing here. We've obviously got that bit in there, which is much darker, but I'll step up to that later on. I'll keep things to 3 values at first. That sort of angles in. I should probably change that. I can get some finer detail. Okay, so that whole side's going to be quite a bit darker. But we do have this big light shape over here. So I'm trying to recreate these shapes that I established earlier on, and they're obviously going to change down the line, but this is just to set things up. So here we've got one as well that comes across. Don't focus on the details, Ryan, just make a simple shape. There we go. Here as well. And we've got a little thing in there. And that does something like that. Not perfect, but it'll do. We also have a bit of a light shape over here. And then we've got some dark. That's darker than that. Put that in there, it's a little diamondish shape. But I'm watching what these lines are doing on my reference image. Looking at the direction of those lines. It comes around, does that. And you can just work with very straight lines if you want to, the same way in here to keep things nice and simple. Nice and simple. Control Z, Z, Z. Okay. And then we have this weird shape here. Placement's going to be tricky. There we go. That's enough. Got a little square down here. And we also have, of course, a shadow that goes out this way. But some parts are lighter. In this, we had this is our midtone, this is our broad shadow. Now we can do the light as well, because there are some light shapes in here. And it gets a little challenging to see now. We've obviously got this one here. And if I'm looking at this relationship, I've got it completely off. This comes out a little bit more. If we were to drop a straight line, you can see how it comes out a little bit past this point. So I'm just going to extend that over a bit. And welcome to the process of painting. Constantly correcting yourself. There we go. We have a little line there where it turns in. We have this shape over here. We have a shape here. Squint my eyes, which. And this is pretty light too, where it comes around onto that corner. There's a bit of shadow in here. But this is quite a light chunk. It's looking pretty chaotic right now, but now we can start going into some finer details and pushing back into those bigger shapes that we've done so far. This is bugging me. I want to neaten it up. Go. Make sure that's nice and neat. Okay, but this is enough of a point to be working from. Okay, we've got enough information here. Placement's fine, and the rest is going to be just rendering, going into smaller shapes, and correcting a lot of what we put in before. Okay, so I could probably leave it at that for the start of. Let's actually just carve this in a little bit. Okay, so anything past this point, it's really just rendering, going deeper into more shapes. But that doesn't look so good. I'm going to do another thumbnail of it. So I'm going to move this over. Move this out of the way. Oops. And now, to try and, we're focusing on shapes, right? And the way you deal with your shapes is also always going to contribute to things looking more stylized. Style is often tied with how you handle your shapes. And it comes with a lot of interesting decisions and combinations. But how you handle shapes is a big part of it. And we can more easily establish shapes with something like the lasso fill tool. Instead of just painting things the way it was, it takes a bit of time. It doesn't take too long, but we can go about it a bit faster, especially when if we have our shape broken down into something that's quite simple. So again, I'm going to put down. Let's put this on a new layer for easy movement later. And I've got the lasso tool sorted here, set to solid. Don't need the stabilizer really. And I'm just going to kind of draw the canvas area out. Cool. Background done. Do the same with table surface. So what's cool with this is as you're painting, let's use a darker color so it's easier to see. As you're painting, it's already connecting your starting point and your end point together. So it's this filled shape, and you can do all sorts of fun things with this. All right, quite a nifty tool for very quickly putting down shapes. A lot of people work with the lasso and then the paint bucket together. This just combines that into one. Okay, so we've got our table. Now let's put down our bag. So I want to do this on a new layer to show something about this tool that's also quite handy. So we had this going across like this, it came up, it's pretty much a straight line up. And if we're simplifying, doing this again, and down. Okay, now that could come down a bit further, so I'll just add in. Now I've got this auto erase mode activated over here. And what that does is if you've got a keyboard connected, if you're on tablet with a wireless keyboard, or if you're on a computer, then you can press and hold E and it turns this into an erasing lasso. It's really quite nice. So you can easily carve back into those shapes. So I know that here we've got that little triangular shape. Okay, that wasn't very accurate. I'll do it again. And I'll probably extend that out a little bit just now. There's a little divot there. And then this comes in as well. Actually, that too. So this makes for like really easy carving out of your shapes. Quite nice to use. Now I can start putting in some shadows. Let's do this. You don't have to be too precise. Might even want to just break it down, because it gets, when you're kind of trying to follow all these lines, it gets a little difficult to see how exactly your shape's going to fill out. So with this, you can just build on top of it really quite easily. We've got obviously this shape in here. That wasn't quite correct, so I'm going to do that. I'll fix it up with the brush just now. The shape comes down, and then out. I'm just going to connect it here, but you can see that we've got this this shadow that does that, comes across like so, and then into that corner again. All of this is in shadow too, so I'll just follow those lines, fill it in. Canvas, wait for the canvas. Okay, so this is another really quick way to just build up those shapes, get things down quite easily, especially if you've got a nice simple value scale. It can cut out a lot of time and let you very quickly see like, okay, that's working, that's not working, maybe I need to change things up. And then from here, you can start to soften a lot of those edges and fix up where you've made mistakes. Again, I'm working pretty small. It's difficult to see any of the finer detail, but I'm just trying to squint my eyes and get the basic idea down. We've got some light over here. That's not the right color. Not the right value, should I say. There we go. It's also quite light. Keep it like that for now. We've got this little bit here. Just probably not the right value. Let's do that. And bring in these shapes. We've got some thin lines. And this comes in as well. So I'm really just trying to, again, break things down into simple, broad shapes. I'm going to keep repeating it, because that's the important part, and that's also what helps to make sense of such a complicated object. But there we go. If I zoom out, that gives me enough. I could probably add in just the super darks here. And here, it's a bit of a weird shape. Let's see. Okay, come up a bit. There we go. And this is quite dark here as well. And then we also have a shadow, so forget that. Actually, it's probably going to be that entire section. Cool. So now we've got another thumbnail out. But all we did, start off, it's just a silhouette. Carve in a little bit to get the silhouette a little closer to our reference. Block in large shadow shapes, block in large light shapes, and then from here we can start zooming in and refining things, and realize also when we zoom in how far off we actually are. Now I want to switch to the brush, I think, because I'm a bit more comfortable with that. And I'm going to check with the angles that I've got of these shapes. So here, for example, that's not right. If I compare with what's going on here, let's change the color. Okay, that's got the top slightly to the left. That's not what I have in mind. And I'm trying to be accurate about this somewhat. So I'm going to just correct that in there. And then we've also got this silhouette that needs a little bit of fixing. And we've lost a bit of that. Put that in. This comes up, down. This comes through and around. Now I'm just sort of drawing back over it instead of painting shapes. Here as well, we've got... But I've got enough information here to start going back and forth, right? I've made the start, and I can... There's enough there for me to compare with the reference and be like, okay, wait, that doesn't line up, that doesn't make sense. And there's enough points of reference for me to easily correct. But overall, it fits in the composition roughly the way it should, and the rest starts to get a lot easier. So let's see, what's like the sort of next shapes that we can see. You can break these down in all kinds of different ways, and it's going to vary on your eyes how it's broken down and how you want to fill it in, because you don't have to look at it like, okay, this is a shape like that, and go all the way around. You can follow through your shapes as well. So, for example, I can connect other bits where here, for example, I can see we've got this curve that comes in, but if I were to follow it, it kind of brings me to about there fairly neatly. So I can try and bring that same curve in just to get the placement of everything right, and then paint over the areas where it changes. Alright, so nice one, James. So don't think about it only as the exact shape you're seeing. Obviously, when you squint your eyes, that makes it easier to see those kinds of shapes. But then when you start to see things a little bit in sort of 3D and how things layer on top of one another, then you can lay something down and then paint over it with the next shape that fits in correctly. Let's see, where's like, so for this was my color. This was one example where it had this big shape here. And you know what? I can see that the paper, this is kind of where that paper has the main curling in. So I could just put a shape down like that and then refine that area. Okay, well this actually would layer on top of it. With this approach, yeah, you could definitely achieve a sort of hyper-realistic. But again, this is, if we're talking about with the lasso tool, for example, to start us off there, it's just a starting point. It's being able to get those really nice hard edges with, let's say with a larger brush, you could just like get a lot of control over it, get a nice hard edge, and maybe hard edge doesn't quite work across the entire painting for that hyper-realistic look, because your eyes will focus in particular areas and some parts will look more blurred. So that hard edge is not something you want to keep everywhere, but for a more graphic style, if you're doing more graphic illustrations, this is a very useful way to go. But I would use this just to block down the main shapes before then coming in with a brush and doing brush strokes, where I can control the edges a bit more. So often you'll start with the painting, for the most part, will have a softer edge. It won't all be a hard edge, but you'll sharpen it where you want focus. When you look at something, like if I'm looking at the edge of my tablet here, also with it contrasting with my very bright screen behind it, that's a very hard edge for me. But while I'm looking at that, the edges elsewhere, as it shifts to my periphery, they're going to be less defined. So they'll kind of they'll appear a bit softer to me while I'm focusing on this particular point. So if you want to bring focus into your painting, you can apply that same thing, where you have a very hard edge line. If it's appropriate, it's a good way to draw in the line. Any kind of a contrast like that, because with that hard edge, it creates a sharp contrast between adjacent things, adjacent colors, adjacent values, adjacent textures. So if there's that abrupt change, then your eye is kind of drawn to it. So let's see. Maybe I can try a color version from here. Of course, you can also, as we can see here, how Nexus is approaching things. You can go in and just start sketching, right? You can kind of always correct, and then the same thing will sort of apply where you're following. I should actually draw something on the canvas. Where you pay attention to the directions of your lines, and you compare where things are placed. So I can see where this corner is, for example. I can see where that corner is. If I were to draw a line between them, okay, it's not a perpendicular line to the surface that it's resting on. I can tell that. So that is not a 90-degree angle. It's slightly turned up to the left, and then I have a new shape that's created as well between the edge of the bag and this imaginary line that I've drawn from one tip to the other. So I can try and recreate that shape. That negative space will be very helpful to get things into proportion. The same thing as we did over here. If I were to draw kind of a straight line across, I'd say, oh, well, there's some negative space there. I'm simplifying. There's some space there. And paying attention to these little points where you can follow the directions of the lines and keep referencing back. And if you don't want to commit right away to drawing a whole line, you can plot points and do very light lines at low opacity and do that sketching approach. But we're going at this the more painterly way. Maybe now I'll tackle things in color. So these are two different tools that you can use to very speedily get something going. The lasso and just the normal brush as well. I like to just use a normal brush. So let's merge that down. Problems of many layers. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Down. And get that out of my way. Okay, if I were to just zoom out quite a bit, those two look like they're pretty close to what I need them to be. Control D, deselect. Okay, there we go. Yeah, new layer for me. But yeah, I think whether you approach this in grayscale or in color, it doesn't really matter. If you're still getting to terms with grayscale, definitely just keep it to a simple set of grays and spend time on that. Can never hurt to do a value study. So let's dive in. Before I do, just check the time and comments if there's anything here. Okay. Now, if I'm going to do, well, I am going to do this in color, and I want to apply the same thinking here. I want to keep things as simple as I can first. There are a lot of plane changes on this paper bag, some facing a lot more towards the light, which plays a bit with the color. But let's revisit what we've done so far. If we were to zoom in and play with our eyedropper tool, just for assessing, we can see what our value is doing on in the color wheel here, and we can do some comparisons to see what happens as we shift from one plane to the next. How much lighter is it getting? That's still, it's in shadow, but it's not as deep of a shadow as in there. But also noticing that as we go deeper into the shadows, what's happening to our color? The saturation, it's gaining saturation, at least in this part, gains in saturation, which is a typical characteristic of shadows. It's not an absolute, but it often happens. And they tend to be a little bit warmer in this case. And if we were to shift, let's say from our mid over here and shift over to lighter areas, what's happening? Okay, obviously we're losing saturation towards the light. So it cools down a little bit. It stays roughly within the same hue. That's the word I was looking for. The hue doesn't change much, but the value in saturation definitely does. A nice blue background. Darker on this side, if we compare our values here. But this shadow is slightly lighter. Okay. Just a little comparison, because it's not a big gap in value, which we can tell when, as much as we can see a pretty clear edge, it's not as clear of an edge on, let me just grab that. This edge is not as clear as that edge, where the difference in value is much bigger. Okay, so just little things to just look at as going along and comparing, because as you lay down a mark, you're assessing it in relation to other things, and you're making your decisions based on everything else that's around it. So your first few strokes aren't necessarily going to be perfect. Yeah, so here comes the fun. I should probably actually try. I'm actually going to tackle this. Yeah, let's do a study, just a quick one, thumbnail in the W. I shouldn't be color picking from the... I don't like to color pick directly from the reference because it's very pinpointed. I mean, it focuses on the pixel that you click on, when generally color, the way we're perceiving it, it encompasses a lot more than just one single pixel. It's how things are combined together. So in other apps, there are ways to color pick the average area, a color of an area, not just a single pixel. So I'm going to gauge this by eye. Let's have a look. Okay, obviously it's sort of bluish. Don't want to make it too dark to start. And I'm going to go with a pixel pencil this time. I like me a nice hard edge square brush. Get a few more settings here if I need them, but I won't for this. Oh, canvas, why do you dislike me? Here we go. Okay, now I lost my color again. We'll just set a base and go with that. So I'm going to drop this down. And I see that it is a little bit darker on one end. So over here. So I just want to lightly suggest that's going to be there. It's just a little darker in this corner. If I'm going to keep things a bit representational of the reference, put that in. And I've just dropped the density and opacity. Density is also set to change with pressure, just so I can more easily make that transition. And then we've got quite a light surface. I think it's on. Okay. Now our brown paper bag, which was this sort of region here. It's kind of yellowy orange. Let's do that. Let's go fully opaque. What's my brush size? Okay. So I'm gonna get the. It could be a little bit darker. Overall shape. That's what I want. Now I don't want to focus on tiny details. I'm seeing how this corner here comes just above where the table is, table edge. Taking note of some tiny details that help me with my positioning. Let's come up a bit more here. I was a musician, I would have made a song about this canvas refreshing. Okay, let's give that a bit more angle. Waiting for server response. That's a new error. I haven't seen that one before. There we go. Oh, I didn't realize how blue my face was on the camera there. It's brightness. Screen brightness is intense. Okay. Now, going into color, I'm going to assess a bit of the light. What is the temperature of our light? It's a little difficult to tell. We've got some warms in our shadows here. Maybe the lighting is cooler. Could be. So we're shifting here. I'm going to go with that approach. I'm going to say that our lighting is cooler, so I'm going to give my shadows a bit of a warmer tone. So I'm going to shift slightly into the oranges, drop kind of halfway to black, dip into a slightly more saturated mode, and again, just keeping it simple. Doesn't have to be the perfect color. Let's keep this big. I want to focus on the details. That's probably even too dark. I'll fix up some bits. Sometimes it's faster to just, lay in a big shape and then carve out of it later, rather than, trying to get my brush size that much smaller so that I can come in to get this exactly right. Oh, I didn't come right there, and then do this bit. If I lay in a big shape like that, I can come in with a big shape here and carve back in to get it that much closer to how I need it. So it's why it's always encouraged to just go with a bigger brush to start. The rest will fall in place. And so that does that. Is the audio a bit clicky? There's a bit of clicking going on in the music, but it's not. It doesn't sound scratchy. The music doesn't sound scratchy. Maybe or is it my voice that sounds a little clicky and scratchy, which is not good. Check my cables. Got a little shadow in there. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier, so I'm going to make the brush slightly smaller. I could also just turn on the pressure. That could help. And that goes down. I'm going to make it bigger again. Okay. Bit big. That's alright. We've got this line. There's quite like a defining line where there's a change in plane. Yeah. So. Okay. Control Z. Go back to the color I wanted. Thank you. So here we can see. Make that a bit smaller. Oh, loud. So where we have the shadow, it's turned in. Don't have any layers selected. How dare you tell me I don't have layers selected? Okay. So this sort of comes over and it dips in, right? And it turns away. It's going in towards the center of the bag. It's turned away from the light source, so it is darker. But it's quite a strong It's quite a strong shape in itself, which I could define much better here. We will come back to it. Quite a dark shape in there. Got a line that, hey, so small. And it's the wrong tool. What is going on? There we go. Okay. Let's get a nice gray for our table here. Get a bit of shadow. Get a bit bigger. It's a very dark shadow. Go with light. Now we said our light is going to be cooler. Typically, if the light is cooler, it desaturates. So normal with light in general. Come up a little bit. The value didn't change much. The hue didn't change much, so I'm going to stay there. We have a triangular shape over there. Let's see. We have a little line in there. We have another. What is that? That looks like a triangle shape to me. One facing down. We've got one sort of facing up over here. There. And we've got carries on there. We've got a line that comes in there. Is there anything I can do to reduce the load? Set my screen subs to refreshing. Is anything else open here? Okay. And it's just an ongoing process like this, right? Back and forth. Checking your values, checking your shapes, and gradually going deeper into smaller shapes. Yeah, make that a bit darker. It's also a bit more saturated. Let's just stay darker. It's already saturated. Pencil. Yeah. Bigger brush, please. There we go. That is a bit more orange there. Just taking note of it. I'm not going to deal with it now. Keeping the value structure simple. And what have we got? We've got there's this weird sort of like curving going on here that's a bit excessive at this point. Yeah. Slightly lighter here. Just to get the shape in. Follow that. And then we have this dark triangular shape just underneath it. Yep, that'll follow the form. Around that way. We've got it's a bit of a tricky value to place, and I know I'm going into a tiny detail here, but I wanted to define what's going on in there just to capture this edge. But would it have been easier to go with the darker value first, a bit bigger? I want it to be a bit more orange. Adding blank lines over the shapes. It would help you make sense of the shapes a little better. But the way you want to, it depends. Are you often when we're starting out with our drawings, we're drawing characters and stuff, we tend to outline things, and you kind of want to try and avoid that if you are going to go for the more realistic approach. And define edges by a change in value. So that's, you know, if I was doing this in pen, make it nice and small, you know, yeah, then I might have these black lines that help to define things a bit. and can tell the direction of the form as it's like sort of turning in. But we're using shapes and values, or shapes of color and value to define that. Whoa, that's definitely not what I want to do. So it can definitely be helpful when you're starting out with a piece to sketch it in, and you can have that sketch in on a separate layer as well, set to multiply your layer mode, so that it's always quite like dark on top of everything that you're busy painting. But at some point you're using that sketch as a guide, and eventually you want to merge it into everything else. And that can actually give quite a nice look when you get this, like, subtle lines blended in. That's definitely more orange. So now I'm starting to think about color more than I should be. This also comes in. So even with like with oil painting, for example, some people will start out with a very thin brush, they would have thinned out their pigment a little bit. If they're doing acrylics, maybe they've just used water to thin it out. And then they will kind of sketch things in on top of their underpainting. They'll do a base layer first, often with a kind of sienna, burnt sienna sort of color. It's a popular choice. And then do a wash of that, and then go with slightly darker, and with a thin brush, like, sketch out so that they place things down. But it's just a sketch, just to help to place things. But now I should stop yakking on and kind of spend some time drawing, or painting rather. I'm not making very much progress. Too busy talking. So as much as this subject looks a little daunting to start, I hope now just the way of explaining things, it comes across as a little less difficult to deal with. Okay, that line that I've got there is completely wrong. It's a lot easier to fix your mistakes when you're working digital. Where's my layer? Why is this not working? Ah, there we go. Just couldn't see it. And then you start looking at more subtle changes in value too. So we've got quite a few, like, bright shapes over here, but we've got this too, which isn't, it's sort of turned a little bit more towards the light, but not quite so much as we have here. So it is still kind of in shadow, but it's not as dark as what's next to it. So we can see this change in value. It's sort of slight. Okay, obviously it's picking up the brown that I've got here. Let's move that. So we start assessing those relationships too. So got a shadow, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. So it still seems like a shadow shape. Come down a bit more. Nah, that was just a little bit subtle, right? Make it subtle. But what's helping to define that is that there is a much brighter value quite close to it. And now I suppose you can start noodling with much finer details. Let's bring it over. But if you go too small too soon, you're probably going to find yourself fixing a lot. And realize that your placement is just off. Like, I know I've got this section coming over way too much. We've got a deep shadow in here. This is a funny one to make sense of. Okay. Still in shadow. So now I'm trying to figure out this point here. There's a few different things going on. So let's go by this approach of making a sketch first to make sense of it. Okay. We've got a line that comes up. I can use the black, you can use whatever color. And it comes across like this. But it's a fold in here. So we've got a really dark line in there. And this is sort of folded open. The top is quite exposed to the light. So we know we're going to have a lighter value in there. But it does fade down, which I can define later. And then from that corner, it comes down into here. So you can do this to help make sense of the lines and the changes in the different planes. But you want to try and paint over that, where it's not the lines that are defining the form, it's value that's and value and shapes of value that is defining the form. Let's do this. Soften some edges, soften some edges. It's going to come like that. What else have we got here? Yeah, the folds they do get tricky. You're right. So in that case, yeah, it can be helpful to just, if you find that it's helpful to sketch it out, then do it. But try not to leave your black lines exposed. Gotta paint over those. I was terrible with that at Varsity. I used to have such a hard time bringing my edges together. I'd always have little white lines or on the canvas, or my black lines would be visible, because it's kind of scary to now bring these edges up together and paint in a way like where the edge is neat, the edge is clear. It's a sort of commitment that you make. This edge here, so a bit, and here too. There's a bit of a change. That value is slightly different to that one, so I'm going to shift this down a bit. Still a triangle. Let's make this bigger. Can't work with such a tiny brush. Oh, it's still light, but not as light. This could even be lighter. That's too much. Now, as much as you have, these light parts, it's not going to be, you're certainly not going to go to white. That's generally not recommended. But it's not a super reflective surface. So you're not going to go to that really strong, crispy, like crisp highlight. But being paper folded, it does have some clear edges, but the highlight is not super bright. Got a shape in there. It's not so dark. Let's dial this back. That's not dark enough. Down a bit more. This should be higher. So I've definitely screwed that up. There. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. And we've also got a similar thing happening. What's going on here, under here, because it's sort of curling down and under. But it's getting some of that reflective light It's sitting on a light surface too. So anything that's facing down towards the ground is also going to be getting a little bit of that light bouncing back into it. It's not going to be super bright, it's quite far away, and it is slightly turned from the light source. But when your surface is so light, that can be one of the effects of it. That areas facing down are getting some of that bounce light, which is what we spoke about in our last lesson, right? So it fades over. Let's see what's my... I'm still trying to figure out that shape there. This also is much closer to the edge. That's part of why things are a mess here. Hey, color pick, please. Okay. So let's get this right. This comes in like so. Quite a big shape here. Goes almost all the way up. That's maybe a bit hectic. I've got a bit of shadow in here. That's probably a bit darker. Got a thin one over there. Darker as well. Actually, let's bring it down. That looks quite warm and dark up top there. Let's go darker. And all the while I'm shifting these darks, I'm trying to keep in mind that I don't want to be as dark as what I've got in here. That's always the darkest that I've gone. That's not getting any light going on being inside the packet. So I don't want my other shadows to be at that same level. It's fine in the beginning for simplification. But this here is starting to get way too close in value. So let's dial it down. Soften it. Density. Okay, and this is kind of light over here, but not so light. Find something in between. Awesome stuff, guys. That's really looking good. And like we did in the past, this shouldn't be focusing too much on this at this point, but I just want to bring out dark edge that I have over here. If I do want that bottom bit or that right edge to be, that right side to stand out a little bit more, I'm going to darken the background behind it. Here as well. Let's bring more attention to this top corner of the bag by setting up a really nice dark or strong contrast between this point and that point. Now let's smooth it out. Smooth out. efficient. Let's focus on the bag. Don't get caught up in background details. I want things to be a bit more saturated. I want to start bumping up the color now. There's still more I can do with value here. Let's see. I know, as I say, I want to play with color and I go back into just defining some of my values. There's this little shape here. Let's do that. And this. Remember to zoom out often and drink lots of water. Loving those colors, automaton. 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 There we go. To say it slowly. And you know what? I could brighten up some things here. Where are we at? 8:15. Well, on my time. Hour and 15 minutes in. Oops. Yeah, I definitely want to shift more into the oranges here. Let's go. Oh, why is it going so slow? Stabilizers off. And if you're happy with your big shapes, go into the small ones. Gotta do it at some point. Yeah, this shape's also, I've made a bit of a mess of that. There's a much sharper difference in shape here. So I'm going to carve it in a bit. Background. It's also quite warm in there. It's shadow. Just line the curtain in the background. Not a detail I should be focusing on at all. It's one of those details that you deliberately push out when you're squinting. Soften it a bit. There we go. Okay. This could be yellower, I think. If overall you feel like your colors just aren't saturated enough, kind of like I've done here, you can play with your filter, hue saturation, lightness adjustments, and just, you know, just a tiny, yeah, come on, just a, not going to do that, just, no, I'm not showing that. Extreme extreme saturation. Don't want that. But yeah, just to get a little bit more color, I might bump it up. There we go. Just to set me right for all the color picking. He's cheating. He's cheating. So, yeah, so that's a bit lighter in there. This is well. It's, what do we have here? This background's a little darker over here. That can help define that top edge. Always looking at these little relationships. That should be a bit darker as well. Just underneath here with this sort of a contact shadow. Didn't show up. Why? Ah, that's why. Things are quite a bit more orange in here. Yes, I think I'm just muttering to myself now for the most part. I've explained most of what you need to just go tackling things. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer. But otherwise, keep painting, keep painting. Nexus showing off there, branding the paper bag with, what is it, a raccoon again? More raccoons. Love it, love it. Whoa, I don't love making random strokes across the canvas. What I am missing is this little detail in here, which is such a nice shape. I can't leave that out. I wanted to find that little square, and I also wanted to find this triangle better. Things are lighter here, I think. Probably go a little darker in there. With something like this, you can really get lost in details. It's quite lovely. If you're looking for something to zone out with, I think this could do the job. What do I have going on here? This is a bit of a mess. Okay, let's see. It's not quite doing it for me. That shape that defines that. This shape here. Have that. It's probably be darker. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that definitely helps. And that's painting, right? It's the difference between drawing and painting. Oh, that's tiny. Let's go here. With drawing, you're usually using lines to define form. With painting, shapes of value, color, light, all that stuff. All those good things. Well, I'm missing some light here. My eyes have definitely had enough screen time today. Here's a sharp line there. This could be a bit yellower, maybe. Brighter. And like, I've zoomed out now where this image is just larger than like thumb knuckle, like past my knuckle here. And I have it as the same size as the reference so I can better assess what I've got wrong here. Oh, that's a difficult question. And I don't really have an answer for you. Each piece will obviously vary, but I tend to get distracted pretty easily, and so one piece takes me a very long time because it'll span over many more days than it needs to be. And I'm horribly indecisive, so you know, I sort of commit. Okay, no, that's looking good. I can move on to the next thing. It's difficult to get to that point, so it can take me a long time. It can take me several days. If I'm focused on a piece, I can get something I'm reasonably happy with done in a week. But if you're doing studies like this, you know, then spend an hour, get something that's sufficient as a study to better understand the material. Whoops, that's the wrong color. And it has been a little while since I've focused on my own painting. For various reasons. So yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I saw Wes Gardner post on Twitter earlier. He just finished up a piece, posted a piece that took him about 40 hours. So there's a lot more going on in there. Much more than what goes on in my paintings. But I'm also still learning so much, so artwork takes a lot longer. Like one area I know I need to improve is with sort of materiality and conveying that clearly. Which has a lot to do with light, and how light interacts with the surface. That tells you what's going on with what type of material it is. You know, very polished gold behaves differently to a ball of wood. If you've shaped a ball of wood that's unvarnished. Change in here. Just comes down. Smaller. So there's definitely more going on here than I've shown. Let's give this area some love. How's everybody's looking? Nice. Nice. Very, very nice. This is that. Makes sense. Nice. Okay, okay. This I haven't got right. That shape's not good. Let's fix that up. Up. Angle it over. Could actually come in quite a bit more. And as you correct one thing, you'll find yourself comparing with now the rest of your piece. Realize, oh wait, well now that I've changed this, it doesn't work with that. And then you've got to go and incrementally change little things. That's the fun. That is the fun. This is also not clearly defined. Let's do it. Sort of wraps it over there. What does it mean to be an artist? Oy. Oy. Hard? Why are you going to throw a question in there like that? Such a big question. I mean, that's obviously gonna vary from one person to the next. I'm trying to think of it, what it is for me. Like for me, it's like I got some things I want to say, right? Things I want to communicate with my art. So on one hand, it's that's exactly right. You have to spend hours looking at a bag and find beauty in the bag. You find beauty in that crumpled up bag. When you start to break it down. So true, so true. But there's so much to it. This wanting to express ideas and different worlds, and depending on the type of artist you are, maybe you're completely fascinated with light, and you want to share the way that you see light, or maybe you want to express new developments in science around light. Find an artistic way to express that, which is easier for people to engage with than a scientific journal. It can have that kind of purpose for you. Who knows? But it's also a way to kind of make sense of the world for yourself, even. We make sense of our experiences, make sense of what we see, make sense of different cultures, by incorporating elements of that into our work. All kinds of things. That is a hell of a question. It's not sitting around waiting for inspiration, I'll tell you that much. That's not the way to go. You gotta work through those uninspired times as well and get frustrated. Brown bags and the apples that came in them. Yeah, well, that's a lot of what it is for me at the moment. Because, you know, with having stuff to say, and you kind of got to learn about the environment around you. And then you come across interesting things, and for whatever reason you want to draw them. Come across like, I don't know, you go to a museum and you see cool shield from some long gone culture and period of time. Like, oh wow, that was really cool, I want to draw it. And you start learning about it. Oh, well, that's interesting. And then you start delving deeper, and then you start adding all these different things into your work. And then you share that with people. Just kind of pass on that knowledge. Because inevitably you're going to have people that are going to see your drawing, your painting, whatever, of this. Maybe it's a portrait of someone wearing a particular kind of jewelry piece that they've never seen before. Like, oh, like, how'd you get the idea for that? Or where does that come from? Maybe it's something you've just seen in a jewelry design magazine, but maybe it's something that you've seen in a museum, or like an element of it is something you've seen in the museum. And you've got something to, you can check, oh, well, I saw this really cool thing. Its culture was like this and that. All the stuff to say. Other people get to learn with you and experience something that they hadn't thought of before. For some, it's just escapism too, you know, and there's plenty of value in that. Creating their own worlds and disappearing into that. And providing that same space for other people. Gives a place of relief. So the world's not that bad. Or my world's not that bad. Come join me in mine. Where to go next with this? This could probably come down a bit more. What's our time like here? 37. I'm glad to hear that, James. If you haven't checked out our other videos yet, I mean, we sort of start off even more at more basic level, just getting down to the, you know, understanding value, light source, applying that to an apple, plenty of that. And yeah, I want these to just be something where we take our time. You know, tutorials tend to be on YouTube, they're amazing, and obviously a great resource. But there's a lot of information that's packed into a very short space of time, which you can repeatedly go back and watch, of course. But yeah, I kind of want to take our time. We give ourselves the time to apply that knowledge, not just just telling you all these different things. So we keep it bite size. Next week we're gonna do. We'll revisit a lot of what we've done again. One more time, but the focus is going to be on more timed exercises and the sort of iteration process, getting a lot of drawings done in a short space of time to test out different lighting schemes, different color combinations, warm and cool lighting, and getting familiar with simple subject matter. And another element will be trying to draw some of those things a little faster in fewer brush strokes, and the rapid iteration of that, the repeated exercises from doing it over 1 minute to then doing it over 3 minutes and maybe 10 minutes. You're forced to make certain kinds of decisions much quicker, because in my case I can sit here like, should I do this or that? Is that color? What is that color exactly? I'm not so sure. I don't really understand what the light's doing. Put a mark down. Get a sense of it, your initial sort of feeling, your look. Put a mark down. Move on to the next marks. Put a time limit on it. Then you can step back at the end of 60 seconds or whatever and assess. Okay, cool. Well, that wasn't quite right. Let's do it again. You can do it again. There was a very cool study that was done where people had to make. I can't remember where I saw this. This was on YouTube. I think it was spoken about. It was a ceramics class, or a ceramics groups, 2 different groups. One had to focus on quality, getting really nice bowl or mug or whatever it was, and maybe do a handful of them. I can't remember the numbers. But the other group was focused on quantity, getting as many bowls or whatever done within that time. I think there was a lot of freedom with how they do it. But they found that the progress and quality of the pieces in the group that had done more bowls, so their focus was on quantity, had a much better quality product, because they've gone through the process multiple times, and you can easily, or you have more feedback from your past experiments or your past processes, and can adjust accordingly. So there's a faster feedback loop for you to make adjustments through. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So the idea here, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do, was that we'll do timed exercises next week. And I'll probably set some specific focus points for something. Some will be in grayscale, some will be in color, some will focus on certain things, pushing shapes. Maybe we'll put a limit on how many brushstrokes you're allowed to make on 1 or 2 of them. But yeah, it's a good exercise to do, a good way to warm up as well before getting stuck into a bigger piece. or into a day of painting. You could just spend half an hour doing some really short, sketchy things. And if you're struggling with motivation, and I'm already starting next week's class, I may as well go into it now. Doing these shorter timed exercises with a very simple subject and a specific focus point, it also lets you get some wins a little quicker. Like, I go through my patches where I'm not happy with anything I'm painting. Things aren't working right. I feel like I don't understand anything anymore. I study this and things just aren't working. Do exercises like this. It's like, oh yeah, no, I actually I can paint. I got that. My focus here was just on like strong value structure, 3 values, nailed it. Cool. Okay, next one. Focused on color. That doesn't look so bad. Simple color scheme, nailed it. I can obviously go into more detail, but the core of it is there. So it helps you get those little wins and just keep the momentum going. So that's next week. If you want to be joining us. Solomon won't be here to open, and also for the clubhouse, he's going to GDC, so he's going to be busy, but I'll be here. I'll be running things. He'll be in my house. And we'll still have some fun. No. It's a nice way to try being way more bold about the colors you choose and the contrast. Sometimes I can take a while to build something up. Like, it doesn't. Little contrast increase, little bit. Rather than just go, you know what, dark, make a mark. I can correct from there. This mouse is misbehaving. There we go. That could be a bit darker. This funky shape in here. It's a little dark in there. Make this a bit bigger. Just a warning, there will be more apples next week. Maybe I'll find some different fruit. Maybe we'll do lemons this time. So what we used to do at art school, bang my knee, that's all right. So we would do, particularly with when we're doing figure drawing, we had a model posing for us. We'd start off our day doing 60-second drawings of the model. She'd change pose every 60 seconds, and we're all sitting kind of in a circle around her with our easels. 60-second drawing, she would change. Sometimes even less than that. Sometimes it would be like a sort of 15 to 20 second, where it's like just a couple of lines just to get the gesture and the weight. It's not to give any kind of detail. It's just to capture a sort of essence of, capture the movement. So you focus on a particular detail there, get the weight, then we'd increase it. Maybe we do 1 minute drawings. Okay, cool. Then suddenly you start realizing how those little extra increments of time, it gives you a lot more time to draw things in more detail. If you're getting good at capturing just the essence, then we ramp it up to 5 minutes, and eventually we would do the same drawing over like a day and a half, where the model's got a single pose, and we just focus on trying to render that in as well and as accurately as we could. But it was first going into those warm-ups. We used to do a 5-day block of just figure drawing, and you'd notice so much improvement during that time. Having a good teacher, but also the structure of it, and just that was all you focused on. Okay. Some more warmth in these shadows. Let's zoom out here. Awesome stuff. Lego as well, good to see you here. Nice to see some of our regulars from the Clubhouse stream. This could be a little sharper there. Comes up. I didn't chat too much about style in here, but the whole process of simplifying your shapes, a big part of it plays into style, defining style, how you handle those shapes, how detailed you want to go, how you handle your plane changes and your edges. That all comes in, and your color choices, of course. What have I done here? Made a mess. Made a mess. Comes down. This is quite right. Yeah, getting there. Can you guys hear the sirens in the background? Well, they're gone now. But... Okay, cool. No, so I'm finally able to let my microphone be free, adjust the sensitivity. The fans on my laptop are fixed because I was having to dampen the sound a lot and have that microphone right in my mouth. So I was just curious about how much it actually picks up now. What value doing here? Well, I think we can call it a day over here with this exercise. Guys did great. These are some awesome paper bags. Yeah, Nyx is going all out there. What do we got here? Nice. What's in the plastic bag, I wonder? Coffee cup looks good. Automaton. Really like the color choices there. Such bold choices. No, the plastic looks good. I read it as plastic. It makes sense. See, there's like some sneaky snacks in there. Some cookies. Some cookies. Yeah. That's a nice strong value there. Very nice. Signing the piece, Koshi. Very nice. Very nice. I was almost impressed by the reference photo there for a second. Ha! Manji! Welcome. Welcome. You're just coming in here to count down and not to paint. Or have you been painting? I just haven't noticed. All good, all good. Of course, once the stream ends, everyone is welcome to continue, do another round. Could even open up a new canvas at the bottom if you want, a bit more space, and keep going. So if anyone's watching this after the fact and you've made it to the end, good job. Probably should have said this at the beginning, but you're of course welcome to jump in on the canvas after the stream, make your mark. Love to see what you add, what you can share in our Discord server. We should also have, I'm sure it'll get added to the stream description, but a little survey just to get some feedback from you guys. Yeah, always trying to improve these things. Yeah, it's the commitment. You still showed up. You still showed up. I know it can be difficult for everyone to attend the streams at the times that they're at. Cool. Let's see if Solomon's listening in the background. Hey, Solomon! I think we're gonna call the stream done. You'll see. He might be munching or playing with his dog. I know I'd get no work done if I had a cute dog with me.
Still here, and you're dead on. I was doing things in the background.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I think that's our session for today.
Fantastic lesson. This is spectacular. Yeah, there is a survey in the description. We definitely love your feedback. Anything that you have to say about this content, things you want more of, please let us know. And the description for next week's lesson sounds really fantastic. The time trials, I love it.
Yeah, it's fun exercise. Try to do it from time to time myself. So excited to do that with everyone else. Yeah, so thank you everyone. Cool. That was great to have you on the canvas. Great work, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Yep, catch you next week. Thanks for tuning into Magma Classroom.
Ciao.